I don't remember exactly why I chose that room. Maybe it was because the rent was cheap. Maybe it was because the sound of rain hitting the tin roof was so comforting when I first visited. But sometimes, when I think back, I wonder, did that sound choose me as if it knew I needed a place to hide, to be quiet, to not have to hear any footsteps other than the rain? The room was on the second floor of a small house, at the end of a narrow alley. The alley was just wide enough for a motorbike to pass through, paved with old, moldy tiles, and always smelled of wet trash, rotting leaves, and time-trapped. Opposite the room was another house, taller, with gray walls and a few collapsed tiles. I remember its window frame clearly, 2 rusty iron bars. The curtains inside so old that their original color was no longer recognizable. The owner was a middle-aged woman. Her skin was wrinkled, her hair tied back, her voice so low that I had to tilt my ear to hear it. When she handed over the key, she only said, "When it rains, don't open the window facing the alley." I thought she was just superstitious. I didn't ask any more questions. In the early days, I hardly paid any attention to the house across the street. During the day, it was quiet, no people, no TV, not even a dog barking. At night, the weak yellow light of the streetlights shone through my window, casting long shadows on the wall. I often worked late into the night, writing reports, editing data. I liked the feeling of isolation, just me, the wooden desk, and the steady sound of falling rain. One night, while I was typing, the power suddenly went out. No thunder, no wind, just a slippery silence and darkness. I turned on my phone's flashlight, unconsciously glanced at the window, and saw a white light on the other side of the alley. At first I thought it was a reflection of the streetlights, but no. The light came from inside the house across the street. A pale white spot, like a flashlight, shone through the sheer curtains, still, unmoving. I stared at it for a few seconds, then reassured myself maybe someone had just moved in, or a sensor light. The next night, again, and the night after that, regularly. Only when it rained did it come on. After a week, I began to feel uneasy. I didn't know why. It was just that every time I turned off the lights in my room, I saw the light reflected off the window glass, as if someone was standing on the other side, holding a lamp, shining it directly at me. I tried closing the curtains, but even when I couldn't see it, I could still feel its presence, a kind of light not for the eyes to see, but for the skin to feel. The 14th night there was a knock, not loud, not urgent, just 3 slow, steady taps at the window. I sat still, my heart beat in time with the rain. The knocking stopped, then started again. I was silent, trying to convince myself that it was a branch hitting the glass. But when I looked outside the next morning, there were 3 blurry circular marks on the steamy glass, exactly where a hand should be. I told the landlady. She just kept quiet, washed the dishes under the faucet, and said, "That house has been vacant for years. No one lives there." I asked why. She said the walls were damp, the house was old, the tenants couldn't live there. I tried to believe, but at night, the white light still appeared. Only this time, the curtain on the other side was open, and I saw clearly the shadow of a person standing inside. Tall, thin, head tilted to the left, hands hanging down, not moving, no expression, just standing and watching. I stepped back, closed the curtain, turned off the light, and sat still. The rain continued to fall, lasting until morning. The next day, I left home early. As I passed the alley, I glanced quickly at the house opposite. The windows were closed, nothing unusual. But on the wall, right below the window frame, I saw a long streak of water, spreading down as if someone had just poured a bucket of water from inside. From that day on, I couldn't sleep. Even though I tried to turn off all the lights, I still saw that light behind my eyelids. It was like a fake moon, faint but persistent. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the image of that window frame. The figure standing in the rain, head tilted to the left, motionless. I started to hear knocking every night. Not just 3, but a series of knocks, sometimes far, sometimes near. Sometimes it seemed to come from the wall, sometimes from under the floor. I put my ear to it, only hearing the sound of running water, but my heart was knocking louder than the sound of rain. One night, unable to bear it, I jumped up and opened the window. No one. Only the house across the street, a weak white light. The window frame slightly open, but I realized the light wasn't coming from inside the house, but from the middle of the alley. It was as if someone was holding a lantern in the middle of the wet street, shining it directly at me. I stepped back. The light went out. The rain obscured everything. The next morning the alley was dry, but there was a long mud trail at the foot of my house's wall, like footprints. Long, deep, from the middle of the alley to just below my window, then stopping. I told the story to the people in the neighborhood. They just shook their heads. An old man selling groceries nearby whispered, "There was a girl staying alone in the house over there. She died during the rainy season that year. The police said she committed suicide, but they didn't find her body. They only found the light in the room on all night." I was silent. I didn't quite believe it, and I didn't dare to deny it. At night, it rained lightly. I didn't pull the curtains, letting the white light reflect off the wall. Part of me wanted to see what would happen if I just let it be. Around 2 a.m., the lights in my room flickered. There was no power outage, just as if someone was standing next to the switch, turning it on and off. The white light across the alley flickered rhythmically. I shivered. I ran to the window, but before I touched the curtain, I heard a whisper, very close. "Don't turn off the light." I recoiled, hitting the chair, my heart stopping. I looked around. No one. But on the window glass, opaque steam had been drawn with a fingertip shaky, scribbled lines, repeating the same sentence over and over. "Don't turn off the light. Don't turn off the light. Don't turn off the light." I left the room the next morning in a heavy rain, without warning, without telling the landlord, with only a bag of clothes, a laptop, and a fear I still don't know how to name. I moved to another place, a new apartment, clean, dry, modern, with no windows facing the alley. I thought I was safe, but just 2 weeks later, on a rainy night in the early season, as I sat working, the desk lamp flickered. I looked up, and on the table, reflected in the glass of water, was that pale white light. I turned around, my heart pounding. No windows were open, no house across the street, but somewhere, from outside, that light was still coming in, cold, steady, and all too familiar. I've tried living in the dark ever since. I don't turn on the lights when it rains. But the strange thing is, no matter what I do, I still see that light somewhere around me. On the mirror, on the screen of my phone, reflected in the water behind the glass. And sometimes, on the quietest nights, I still hear a slow knock 3 times, spaced out like a breath. I don't know what really happened in the house across the alley that year. I just know, every time it rains, no matter where I am, I have the feeling that someone is standing somewhere out there, head tilted to the left, looking at me through the water, as if waiting. And if I accidentally turn on the light, I know the light on the other side will come on too. I used to work at a small printing house, the night shift. It was in the suburbs, more than an hour away from the city center by bus. Every day, I finished work at 11:20, catching the last bus back to the city. One rainy day, I had to wait at the station for nearly 40 minutes. Just me and the yellow street lights, flickering on the puddles like metallic skin. I don't know since when, but the image of the bus station in the rain became something that haunted me forever. Not because I had ever had a terrible experience there, but because there was something about the repetition. The nights were so similar that I began to fear that familiar rhythm of life. The bus station had only 3 wooden seats, covered with a rusty corrugated iron roof. Behind it was the wall of a long-closed shop. I often sat on the outermost seat, under the peeling route number plate. From there, I could see the last corner of the street where the bus lights usually appeared first, cutting through the rain like a slow-moving dot of light. And almost every night there was someone else sitting in the middle seat. A woman. I couldn't see her face. She always wore a dark coat, a hood, her hair hanging down over her shoulders, looking down at her phone or sometimes just at the palms of her hands. I never heard her speak. I never saw her move much. All I knew was that whenever the bus came, I got on first, she got on after, and always sat in the back seat. When the bus pulled out of the station, I could still see her silhouette in the reflection of the window through the steamed-up glass, head tilted, motionless. This went on for almost 2 months. I had gotten so used to her presence that if I didn't see her one night, the bus station felt uncomfortably empty. It felt like a part of the night was missing. Then one night, it rained harder than usual. I arrived at the station, wet and cold. No one but me. The rain was so heavy I couldn't see around the bend. The bus was late. I sat there, muddy-legged, listening to the rain pounding on the tin roof and the water running down the metal pipes. I remember it clearly, so quiet that every sound seemed stretched out, slow, heavy, full of empty space. Just then, someone sat down on the seat next to me. No footsteps, no splashing, just the faint rustle of a raincoat. I didn't turn around. I just stared straight out at the road, thinking to myself, it must be her. I tried to stay calm, but my palms began to sweat. A drop of water from the eaves hit my knee, and I suddenly realized I couldn't hear any breathing next to me. Just empty space. I turned my head slightly to the right and the seat next to me was empty. No one, no footprints, no sound, but the back of my shirt was cold, as if someone had just stood right behind my seat for a few seconds. At that moment, the bus lights flashed in the distance. I gasped and stood up. When the bus stopped, I turned my head to look one last time. 3 empty wooden seats, under the dull yellow light. Water dripped from the awning in dim threads. I got on the bus, swiped my card, and found a seat. The driver looked at me through the rearview mirror, his voice flat. There are very few people standing at that station these days. It's been raining all day. I nodded, saying nothing. The bus started moving. I looked through the window, saw the bus station gradually receding behind me, fading in the rain. But when the bus had gone about 20 meters, the headlights reflected on a figure sitting right in the middle seat, head bowed, dark coat, motionless. I turned around to look again, but the bus had turned. I didn't say anything to anyone. I just thought I was seeing things wrong. The rain distorted everything. But the next night, and the night after that, I still saw her. Not when I arrived, but when I left. When the bus turned, the lights shone through. Her shadow was still sitting there. One night, I decided to stay, not take the last bus. I lied to the manager that I was sick and stayed until morning. I wanted to see what really happened after the bus left the station. The rain was still falling. The clock read 11:50. I sat in the darkness of the canopy, looking at my watch, listening to the sound of insects mixed with the rain. When the last bus light disappeared around the corner, I still sat there. The alley was deserted. No one was there. About 10 minutes later, I heard footsteps. Light, slow, dragging. I held my breath. From the end of the street, a figure came. Under the dim streetlight, I clearly saw a dark coat, a thin figure, wet hair stuck to his cheeks. The person came, stopped in front of the station, and looked up. I retreated deeper into the dark corner. The woman looked straight at the row of seats where I usually sat. She said nothing. Then she walked over and sat down in the middle seat. No one else, just her, and the sound of the rain. I could clearly see her hands resting on her thighs, her fingers trembling slightly, her head tilted slightly to the left, toward the road, as if waiting for something. I stood still, listening to my heartbeat mixed with the falling rain. Then she burst into tears. Not loudly, just small, choked sobs, mixed with the sound of the water. I don't know why, but my tears flowed too. There was something about that sound that made me feel utterly alone. I don't remember when I left the station. When I realized it, I was walking home, soaked, my hands shaking so much I couldn't hold my keys. The next morning, I had a fever, 3 days straight. When I returned to work, I asked the driver of that line, half jokingly, "Do you remember the girl who used to sit at the station near the printing house?" He was silent for a moment and then replied, "That station? There was an accident in 2018. A girl was hit and killed by a car while crossing the street in the rain, right in front of that station. Afterwards, the lines were repainted, but it seems like no one sits there anymore. Only occasionally people say they see the girl still waiting for the bus." I was silent. My heart felt like it was slipping out of my chest. "In el-Faim vishmuna asara?" I asked. He nodded. "Yes, why do you ask?" I couldn't say anything. I only knew that the year I started working the night shift was 2018. Since then, I changed lines and never passed that station again. But every time it rained, waiting for the bus elsewhere, I could still hear the sound of water flowing through the corrugated iron roof, the sound of drops falling on the cement floor, and sometimes I saw someone sitting in the middle seat, head down, in the rain. I tried to tell this story to friends. They said I was imagining it, or I was too tired. Maybe it was a homeless person, or a reflection of the headlights. But I knew I wasn't mistaken, because that night, as I was leaving the station, I took one last look back and saw the small folded umbrella lying on the middle seat, blown by the wind, rolling in the water. I picked it up. The handle was cold, but when I opened it, the metal frame was bent inside, and on the fabric, there was a streak of reflective paint, the kind used to draw road markings. I took the umbrella home, put it in the closet. Sometimes, when it rained, I could hear the water dripping on the umbrella, even though no one had touched it. And there were nights, in my fitful sleep, when I heard someone whisper, "Is the bus here yet?" I didn't answer, because I was afraid that, if I answered, she would get up and get on the same bus as me. I used to work the night shift at a small motel along the highway, about 20 kilometers from the city center. It was nestled between a gas station and an old auto repair shop. The signboard dimly lit all night like a light that didn't want to go out. The motel had only 8 rooms, each with a security camera that was connected directly to the front desk, where I sat and watched from 9 at night to 7 in the morning. Usually nothing special. Most of the guests were long-distance drivers, night shift workers, or early morning traders. They came, got their keys, paid in cash, and disappeared before dawn. I worked there for 3 years. Until that December night, I still remember every breath, every drop of rain falling on the old tin roof. That night, there was only one guest left in room 208, a tall, quiet man in his 40s. When he checked in, he didn't look up at me, just put his ID card on the table, his voice hoarse. Just one night. I nodded, handed over the key, and I didn't have time to return the extra money he gave me because he had already turned away. I only had time to look at him. His figure was stiff, slow, as if he was carrying something heavy in his head. It started to rain at around 11 o'clock. The rain wasn't heavy, but it was persistent. I turned on the surveillance screen. All 7 frames were black. Only room 208 was lit. The guest sat on the bed, head down, hand on something I couldn't see clearly. Maybe a phone, maybe a recorder. I only saw a small red light flashing next to him, then it went off. I didn't care much. The rain caused interference with the network, and the camera was also unstable. I made coffee, turned on the radio to listen to the late-night news. At around 2 o'clock in the morning, the camera screen of room 208 shook slightly. Then the word "wreck" appeared in bright red. I was startled. All the cameras here only had live view mode, not recording. The wreck only appears when someone presses the record button, but I don't have that turned on. No one but the manager has permission to turn it on. I stare at the screen. The image blurs for a few seconds, then clears. The man is still sitting there, in the same position, but his head is lowered. Beside him, on the table, is a small silver tape recorder. Its red light is on. I call the room. No one answers. I wait a moment, then call again. Still no answer, just the steady rain outside, and the radio mixed with the soft ringing of the phone. I get up, grab my flashlight, and climb the stairs to the second floor. The hallway is dark, damp, and smells of mold and old cigarette smoke. When I reach room 208, I knock lightly. "Hello? I'm at the reception. Are you okay?" No answer. I put my ear to the door. It's dead silent. Then suddenly, a small click sounded like the sound of a record button being pressed. I stepped back, my palms cold. The wind and rain blew through the crack in the door. The smell of damp mixed with the smell of metal. I waited a few more seconds, then turned back. When I passed the monitor screen, the word "wreck" had disappeared. Early in the morning, the guest left unexpectedly early. When I had just left the security room to record the time, he was standing at the counter, his jacket soaked, his eyes dark, saying softly, "I'm checking out." I asked him if he could sleep, and he just nodded. "I don't want to keep the room anymore. It's a bit noisy here." I tried to smile, signed the receipt. He left the key, walked out, and didn't look back. But when he passed the door, I saw in his hand a small recorder, the red light still flashing even though it wasn't on. About 2 hours later, when the room was cleaned, the cleaning lady called me up. Room 208 was unusually clean, no trace of anyone living there. The blanket was folded, the glass of water on the table was empty. There was only one thing lying in the middle of the bed, a tape recorder identical to the one the guest had brought this morning. I picked it up. It was heavier than I expected. The light was off. I turned it over. The battery was still there, but the device wouldn't turn on. I pressed the play button. A short sound came on. Rain, a light breath, then silence. Then a male voice, soft, whispering close to my ear, "Please don't turn it off." I put the device down. My hands were shaking, my back was cold. I pressed it again. The same sound, exactly the same tone, same breathing. It felt like I was hearing the very sound of this room, of last night, of the rain falling outside. I told the manager. He just shrugged. If the guest forgot it, keep it at the counter. I nodded, put the device in the drawer. I didn't dare turn on screen 208 that night. But at around 2 a.m., while I was writing in the register, the screen lit up by itself. The word REC appeared in red. The image was room 208. No one, just an empty bed, a dimly lit desk lamp, and in the middle of the bed a small tape recorder, a flashing red light, just like the night before. I knew for sure that the room was locked. The key was in my hand. No one could get in, but the image was still there. I approached the screen, tried to look closely, and then a sound came out, a small click, then the sound of rain. I turned off the screen. There was no explanation. I didn't sleep all night. The next morning, I opened the cupboard. The tape recorder was gone. No one claimed it. No one knew. I asked the cleaning lady. She said she hadn't touched it. I checked the register. No new guests. 2 days later, the police came. A man had a car accident 10 kilometers away, died on the spot. They came to verify because he had the room card 208 inches his pocket. I recognized that face right away. It was the guest. I asked about the recorder. The policeman looked at me. He had nothing but a card and a piece of paper stuck in his wallet. It said exactly 3 words. Don't turn off the lights. I was silent. I couldn't say a word. After that day, the motel closed for a week to fix the camera. When it reopened, I was transferred to the morning shift. But every time it rained at night, I still sat at the counter, looking at the screen. Room 208 was usually empty, but I swear, I still occasionally saw the desk lamp turn on in the middle of the night. One time, out of curiosity, I opened the camera archive again, looking back at the most recent rainy night. At exactly 2:03, the light in room 208 turned on, then off. I rewinded it. There was a figure walking past the bed. Not clear, but vaguely tall and thin, shoulders tilted, arms hanging, head bowed. I unplugged the power cord. The screen went black. 3 months later, I quit my job. I thought I needed a change. But every night, sitting in my new rented room, it would rain, and I would hear a small sound click like the sound of a recording button being turned on. At first I thought it was a mistake, but then I noticed, every time the click sounded, my desk lamp would blink. Not hard, just once, then off. I had never told this story to anyone. I didn't want to be laughed at, nor did I want to remember it. But every time I heard the rain, I would see the recorder in my head there, the red light blinking, and the voice as soft as a breath, still repeating the same sentence. Please don't turn it off. I didn't know if it was talking about the light or about something else. All I knew was, I could never sit in the dark again.